PR Connections Radio presents. This podcast is brought to you by LifeWave. Ready to elevate your wellness game? Meet X39 from LifeWave.com. This game-changing patch uses phototherapy to stimulate your skin, enhancing strength and stamina by channeling your body's innate energy. Simply apply it to harness infrared heat, naturally boosting your vitality. Want to learn more? Visit www.lifewave.com/VernD and step into a healthier, more active lifestyle today.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Breaking the Silence Beyond the Boundaries, where bold voices rise and limits fall. I'm your host, as you know, Gail Larson, and today we're exploring what it means to live beyond the boundaries that once limited us. And my guest today is Lydia Pejovic. I hope I didn't butcher your last name very much. But she's an accomplished author, which she'll tell you a little bit about, and a poet whose work reflects themes of identity, perspective, personal transformation. Now, through her writing, including her novel, Shifting Tides, and her own experiences with embracing new culture and new languages and just a new way of thinking, Lydia reminds us that growth is not a destination, it's an ongoing journey. So, Lydia, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Well, give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been writing ever since I was very, very young. That's been my main interest. I was talking to my parents about this the other day before I even learned how to read and write. I used to write like squiggly lines in my notebook, and those were my stories. So I've been been writing for a very long time. But I went to college in San Diego at University of San Diego. I got my English undergrad degree there, and then I moved to Orange County. I briefly worked in sales, and then I was like, I really want to go back to writing. So I went to graduate school at Chapman University for 3 years, and I got my master's in English and my MFA in creative writing there. And I also taught some introductory 100 and 200 level English courses there. So, and now I'm a UX writer, so I do more corporate writing, and I still do all my creative writing as well.
Wow, that is amazing. And it's, I'm just so glad that we connected this past weekend, because it's like we're sisters from another mother or something.
I know.
As far as your background in writing and then wanting to go back to writing. So when you think about, and I'm going to talk a little bit about people that are in your circle, as far as living beyond the boundaries. Now, when you look around, do you feel that other people around you are actually doing that, like living beyond the boundaries, or maybe just playing it safe?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like there are some people who I've met that want to go past what is prescribed or what they think they should do. And I think that's what was really nice about going to like a graduate program, is because it was a lot of people who believed in doing a craft that I think some people nowadays, they think it's risky to do anything creative. And I remember in undergrad, I'd have a lot of people say like, well, why don't you get a STEM degree? It's much more practical. And I'm like, well, it might be practical for you, but I don't know if it's practical for me. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that I do know some people who are willing to take the step to not just do what they think is the prescribed thing that they should keep doing.
Yeah, exactly. I know when I first revealed to, people in my circle that I had written a book, they were like, what? Or that I'm doing this right now after retirement. They're like, what? So like when you share with others about you having written a book, what has that response been?
A very similar response, I would say. I think a lot of people, they'll say, well, how do you find the time to write? And I think with anything, if it's what you really care about, you'll find time for it, right? But I think a lot of people, when you tell them you've written a book, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to begin. And it is a long process, but I think it's worth it if it's something that you're interested in.
So tell me a little bit more about what your process was like in terms of just making that decision. Okay, I'm going to put it down on paper, and then getting from start to finish and getting ready to publish. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's interesting. What's funny is I probably went about this in a more complicated way than I needed to at the very beginning, because for my thesis in graduate school, I could have chosen to start a fiction book or a poetry book. And I chose to write a book of poetry instead, because I knew on my own, I would probably write my own fiction novel, but I don't know if on my own, I would write my own book of poems because I'm much more inclined to writing fiction. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself and do poetry for my thesis, which my fiction professor, he wasn't too happy about that because he wanted to help me write the fiction.
Right. The whole thing with structure. This is your beginning. This is the body. This is how we build a climax, all that stuff.
Yeah. But you know what? I had so many fiction classes in graduate school, and I was like, I think I'm ready to take it on my own. So I'd written mostly short stories and maybe like a few chapters. But I got this idea with the book that I completed last year called Shifting Tides, the one that you mentioned in the introduction. I got inspired actually from living in San Diego, and like kind of like the people I was around there, and it was like very interesting. And I came up with this idea, and I had this image in mind actually from this short story I wrote. So I got this short story written about this like divorced couple who are like kind of, they share custody of like a teenage adult son, and he's got, addiction issues basically.
Yes.
And so I was like, this could be a really interesting novel. So I took I'll call it like, it's kind of like a first chapter, but it's a short story. So I took that and I reworked it, and I was like, well, how could this be, a longer book? And how can I make this something interesting, but also like worthwhile that people would want to read in a longer form. And then I had the idea actually to write it from their three perspectives. So the book shifts in perspective. One chapter is from the husband, one chapter is from the wife, and one chapter is from the son. So that was fun for me because I was like, I get to play around with structure and perspective.
That's right. Oh, that is awesome. And it definitely sounds intriguing.
Oh, thanks.
Interestingly enough, another episode that I just recorded, I'm not even sure if it's even aired yet. I interviewed someone with that exact scenario.
Oh, wow.
She had been divorced now since her child was 3 years old, and now 15, and they're raising the son together, but in different states.
Oh, wow.
So, what you're talking about is probably more common, than people expect. So I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of people for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping, because it's literary fiction. So it's fiction, but it's supposed to be very realistic to something maybe some people experience in their daily lives.
Yeah. So you also mentioned that you go back and forth to Mexico,
Yes.
and you get a lot of different experience, and that's definitely living beyond the boundaries as well. So what's that been like for you?
It's been really great because I never went before I met my husband, and I lived so close, especially when I was, going to college in San Diego. But, being young and being a teenager, my dad's like, don't cross the border without my permission, or, all that. So I never went. But, it's been so fun going. I think it's really also helped me. I like meeting people of all cultures, and I kind of joke too because my dad's side of the family is Serbian, and the cultures are actually so similar when you go to Mexico. Like I experience like the people are very kind and just very warm and welcoming, and like very similar cultures. So I feel actually very at home when I go there, and my language comprehension is getting a lot better. I always took Spanish classes, but actually, talking to his family and making sure I'm immersed in the culture, it's helping a lot.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Have you thought about incorporating your experiences traveling back and forth to Mexico and all of that within your writing, or have you already done so, like through your poetry and through your novel?
Yeah, I've been thinking, I'm almost thinking of that in like a poetry format, which is interesting. I've been kind of inspired, like growing up here in Vegas, like all the desert landscape is really interesting to me. And I'm writing a new book right now that's like totally different from the first one that I wrote, which
Mhm.
is about these girls who live in, I'll call it like a religious, it's basically a cult, but they get dropped off as young children, and it's all women. They never see any men, and they're in like Texas, in the middle of like the desert there. So I am definitely inspired by like the sort of like desert environment, isolated, and like driving through these interesting parts of like Texas all the way through like Nevada and Mexico.
Wow. Well, you just never know when you might find yourself in a similar situation, either by choice or what should I say, by abduction? I
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
know. So, anyway, and before we move too far from shifting tides,
Mhm.
um, how would we go about if we wanted to pick up the book, or tell us where you are in the process of the publishing aspect of
Yeah, I'm looking for an agent right now. I'm trying to get representation. If I'm not finding anything with that, I think I might go the self-publishing route and try to get it, up on Amazon or a way to easily download it. But all my writing is on my website. It's just my first and last name.com. So lydiapejovic.com, really easy to
it?
find. And I
Yeah.
have links to like all my short stories that have already been published and poems and other things like that. But hopefully I can get an agent and get it officially published. We'll see.
That's awesome. So, in terms of your writing and your adventures, are you pursuing anything with regard to public speaking or, sharing your message? I mean, have you thought about that in any way?
I think it would be really fun because I've always liked to speak in front of people. I feel very comfortable talking to large groups of people, and like when I was teaching, that I think that was the most fulfilling part of my career journey so far because I just had so much fun, picking something for us to talk about or all of us to learn and discuss, and seeing, I like the audience interaction too, and seeing what people have to say. So I think definitely that could be something that I would enjoy doing.
Yeah, well, hopefully after doing this podcast and then sharing it with, your circles as well, you'll get involved with other people that would be interested in hearing your story.
Yeah.
I'd mentioned earlier to you that I'm involved with a community that's the Los Angeles Tribune. And so they are always having leadership summits and so forth. So maybe it would be a good idea that you also could get on board and do some things in that regard.
Yeah,
So I'm going to go
absolutely.
back to another area where we have in common, and that is teaching.
Yes.
And I taught in elementary and I taught in middle school. And then
Mhm.
I did some workshops at the college level as well.
Fun.
So the audience really does make a difference in terms of how you relate to them. So, are there any particular experiences that are at the top of your head in terms of how you relate to your audiences with especially the creative side of you?
Yes, and this even goes into like my kind of my corporate job I do right now because I
Mhm.
I feel like everyone hears me say all the time like we have to know who our audience is because it's so important like to tailor the message, and like there's just so many things that are dependent on who you're talking to. And I really loved when I taught middle school poetry and creative writing for some time, and I really like that age because they are kind of they are getting affected by social norms and peer pressure a little, but they still are willing to be creative and put out interesting work and stuff that might be, like unexpected. So I had a small classroom, and we used to be like, we'd sit in a circle on the floor, and I'd have them do different poetry exercises. Like one of my favorite is we had a bookshelf, and I'd have them pick, a book, and I'd say, let's pick out like 5 to 10 words, and you're going to have to write a poem right now and use all of those words in your poem. And I would have great memories of them coming up with like really great work. So I really liked working with them. And I also liked working with university students who like came into my class and they were like, I don't like English. I don't like reading. I don't like writing. And I would tell them, like, this class is not to make you become an English major. What I want you to do is be comfortable expressing yourself and be persuasive wherever you go. And I got great feedback from my students that it's like, well, you didn't force me to do something I don't like. So now I think I like to write.
Well, that is so funny because, middle school, which is where I spent a majority of my time as well, they are so needy. I mean, not needy in the, dramatic sense of the word, is they're looking for attention, not
Yes.
just necessarily attention from each other, but attention from their teachers and positive reinforcement and so forth. So for you to spend that kind of very informal time and give them the space for creativity, that really does encourage them to live beyond those boundaries that,
Yes.
were very limiting. And I'm sure you'll be one of the most memorable teachers in their lives for
I
sure.
hope so.
'Cause, things have changed so much with not just social media, but just with technology, with AI. And
Mhm.
so I fear, I literally do fear for teachers that are in the classroom right now because kids have access to so much, with Chat GTP to give an
Mhm.
assignment and say, do this. And then they just go in and they put it into Chat GTP and say, there you
Yep.
go, you know. But I think the methods of teaching has got to change as well. So kids,
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about that maybe? How do you feel about that?
I agree with you completely. It's a huge concern of mine, and I'm happy that I was not a child during like a huge like boom
Mhm.
with artificial intelligence like there is now, because I think it really stunts creativity and the ability to think outside of the box. And if I were teaching right now, we would be very prehistoric in class. I don't think there would be like any technology in class that the students would have. Like I would be like pen and paper, we're maybe whatever I put on a projector, but I really think it's so important I think a lot of students like because of social media, they're very like aware of themselves in a way that I think some adults are not, of a certain generation and older, because they're just very aware of themselves. They get self-conscious, and I like to try to give them time to, think in your own mind. Like, don't look anything up. Like, just sit here and maybe just write down what you think for 10 or 15 minutes. Like, get into yourself and think, and I think it's important for them to get away from technology sometimes. I know it's so integrated, but I think going beyond the boundaries is now like using a pen and paper, reading a physical book,
Right.
going
That
outside and maybe journaling what you see. Just, unique ways, old school ways of teaching, I guess, are maybe going to make a return, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, hopefully so. I think about an assignment that I did on a regular basis when I was teaching English, that the students had to create a commercial,
Oh,
you
fun.
know, to advertise a product. And that's very basic.
Yeah.
These days, when you think about the commercials that are out there right now, think about those Super Bowl commercials.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what the challenge has to be in this day and age in order to compete with all the technology to come up with
Mhm.
a basic advertisement. So, yes, it should be interesting. I think just for kicks and giggles at some particular point, now that I'm retired, I want to go back into the classroom and just
Yeah.
observe how they're doing it, so I can get a better perspective.
Definitely. That would be very interesting. I think things have changed even in the last like year or two. I've heard some people I know who still teach that a lot of them try to do no technology in the class at a certain point because a lot of kids they have like the Chromebook laptops and then they'll just get sucked into the internet in the middle of class and then they don't learn anything and then I'm now the cliche like I'm like the old woman like you're not learning anything on that computer, but it's true.
But yeah, I know. I mean, and I have to admit, sometimes I get sucked in. I mean, I
Oh
go in for a particular purpose and then there's a notification and I go hit that notification. Next thing you know, I'm just death scrolling or whatever it's called.
Oh,
So
yeah. That's why in graduate school, I took all my notes with pen and paper because I knew if I was writing on my laptop, I would not be paying attention.
that's right. That's right. Okay, so this takes me back to you professionally because you're a UX writer, you're a content strategist, and these are two very different things. It's almost like left side of the brain, right side of the
Yeah.
brain. How did that actually come about?
Yeah. So, actually, one of my friends who I was in theater and English with when I was in undergrad at USD, he went straight into the workforce actually, and I went to graduate school. He was also like a year above me in school, and he was working at the company that I'm currently working at now, and. I had a very busy schedule. I was teaching like 3 classes. I was finishing my thesis. I was finishing my whole degree. And he was like, "Hey, my boss, he needs like a freelance person. Do you want to work at my company? I can get you in." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, okay, yes, I guess." I have a lot going on. So I ended up like working freelance for about 2 months, and I got asked to work part time. And I had never done UX writing before. And I started actually as a copywriter, but I got added on to some client projects that were like all UX writing and all content strategy, which I was very unfamiliar with. And I kind of had a crash course. I read like 2 books that like for my job, and then I was shadowing a little bit someone who is more senior than I was, and I've actually come to enjoy it a lot. I didn't really know that this was a writer job that was available because it's kind of niche, but
Yeah.
it's been really interesting. I never expected that I would do a job like that before.
Wow. Well, it sounds very interesting to me. I mean, to hear the way you talk about it and to have your creative side being
Mhm.
fulfilled through something that actually makes money is like the ultimate, the
Yes.
ultimate. So who
Definitely.
knows? Although I'm retired, maybe I might explore something to that effect
It's
because,
interesting. I think you might like it.
yeah, absolutely. So when I think about self-empowerment, because when I talked to you initially, that was really the first thing that came to my mind, how self-empowered you were.
Oh, thank you.
And, especially for someone trying to move beyond, fear and judgment and doubt and living
Mhm.
beyond the boundaries. What would you tell someone who is fearful of living beyond the boundaries?
I would say get rejected and get rejected multiple times because that's the only way you're going to get past that fear. Because I think a lot of people fear when you want to do something and somebody tells you no. And then it's like, well, what do I do from here? They told me no. But that's been, I think, the best lesson I've learned is that you're not always going to get everything you want on the first try, maybe even on the fifth try, maybe even on the 10th try. And within writing I've had so much rejection, and I've learned, okay, it's not that the work isn't good, it's not that nobody's going to like it, it's that maybe it's not right for this person, this agent, whoever it might be, this
Yeah.
journal. But there will be somebody out there for you if you keep working at it. And I really think the best thing that ever happened to me was getting rejected hundreds of times, and now I feel like there's no like burden on my back after that, that I can just accept. If somebody says no, I'll move on to the next thing.
That is just sage advice. In parts of my book, I talk about fear of failure.
Mhm.
And fear of failure is one of the biggest fears when people are confronted with change and they don't want to change.
Yeah.
But failure really just opens you up to new learning.
Yes.
You think this is going to be, well, I may not have it, established my goal at this particular point, but what can I learn from this? And how can I apply it to, my pursuit moving forward?
Yes,
So,
exactly. It was hard for me at the beginning because, I've always been like a straight A student. I really like getting good grades and I always show up on time and I don't like to miss school. Like, I was very good and I always
mhm.
wanted to like achieve what I could to the highest level. But, sometimes there are barriers or things that just don't happen the way you're wishing or expecting. And I think it's good to fail. I think it's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, here's a question for you. If the younger version of Lydia could see your life right now, writing novels, embracing your, creativity, becoming more fluent in Spanish, and just living openly, what do you think would surprise your younger Lydia the most?
Okay, two things, which is hilarious, completely hilarious. The first thing I told myself when I was in school, I said, oh, I would never want to become a teacher. I'm not interested in that job, and I told my parents, I never want to become a teacher. It just seems, I don't like it, whatever. The second thing I took Spanish class since like sixth grade or whatever. But then I said to myself, oh my gosh, why am I in this? I'm never going to use this Spanish. I'm not going to use it. I said, it's not relevant. I don't know why I'm, taking, all of these classes. So I think first I would be shocked. I think I'd laugh like serious. It's so ironic, isn't it? But I think it's so good to learn that the things that you say you would never do become like the most important parts of your life. And I think it's a good lesson to just be open to what comes to you, because you can say never, and then it might be like the best thing that's happened to you.
That's exactly right. Well, yep, that is truly ironic. The things
Yeah.
that you thought you'd never do, there you are doing.
Yep.
That's awesome. So, as we close our session today, this has just been fantastic getting to know you even more. Hopefully, I'll have a chance to see you later on if you
Yes.
join my bilingual Toastmasters club, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I've just been thrilled. I'm hoping that our listeners out there will take your sage advice to heart. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid to go beyond the boundaries. And until next time, don't fear breaking the silence. Go beyond all of your boundaries. Thanks for being on the show, Lydia.
Thanks for having me. It was great talking with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success. PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.